Good morning and welcome back to it, the Down Morning Show, Tobago Thursday edition. And apparently it's time to say goodbye to the Tobago Jazz Experience. Or is it? To find out, or at least to discuss that, this morning, John Arnold joins us on the Now Morning Show. His title today for this conversation is former jazz coordinator. As we answer the question, is it time to say goodbye officially, Mr. Arnold? Welcome and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, that's a very tricky question, Ainka. It's very, very tricky. But I think temporarily it has been announced that it's bye-bye. But I think fundamentally, I think we have to drive back to two very important documents. One was in 2017, which was a study by Nurse on the feasibility viability of the Tobago Jazz Experience, and one in 2018 by Kyrie consultant, Dr. Henry, I think, that spoke to how powerful the cost benefit assessment of the festival. And so I think one of the things is that we have to kind of situate this in the place where we understand what the festival is doing for Tobago and what that brand has done over the years. I mean, governments throughout, they spend money, I know, on infrastructure, health, almost everything, yes. And I think one of the sectors that governments, all governments, is support the tourism infrastructure and the stakeholders to ensure that they have that kind of support. And I think this festival has done that over the last 15 odd years, even in all the iterations. So I don't know, there's just um, a small thing I just want to read that will situate the conversation, Ainka.
Sure.
And this is from the study that was done, right? It said here with the TG, with the Tobago Jazz now well institutionalized in the festival calendar of Tobago, it behoves the Commission and the authorities in Tobago tourism to collaborate and promote the event as a component of the tourism product of Tobago. It further says the Tobago Jazz Experience should be extended over at least 3 days, with the private sector events becoming more integral to the program. One of the objectives of the festival is to have a larger inflow of visitors and greater expenditure on their part in Tobago. This would mean a higher occupancy of hotels and guest establishment and an increase in demand for other goods and services, right? In addition to that. And the last part I want to say is the recommendation from the 2018 study was given the fact that we listened to all kinds of genres, and the festival has now attracted hip hop, reggae, jazz, new fusion artists, etc. That the suggestion at that time was to make the festival and name it the Tobago Soca and Carry Jazz Festival. But the point I'm making there is that you realize that once we have the rising tide effect there, that you have the state putting out that kind of money, understanding what it will do for tourism, then all the other small festivals will float. So that's my start.
Well, that sounds like a start that is very optimistic towards it coming back, like you said, temporarily, because you see the positives that is added to the Tobago landscape. Yeah? Safe
Yeah,
to say?
well, yeah, so I'm making sure that, I always say I have three parts to me. I am my personal, my professional, and my official. Today, I have no official. So I'm just personal and professional. So I can talk openly, about these things. And really, these are the things we have to kind of ventilate in the space and have to have the discourse. And so farewell from the current administration may be there, and maybe some administration or the same administration, whoever, may consider, because I think part of the problem is really not having a real firm policy and plan that we can all sit down and fit into and follow. I think that is where the problem is. I think once we sit down in 2003, we don't have the time to talk it, but in 2003, when the decision was made by the then secretary in the Tobago House of Assembly to pursue event tourism. It was a very tricky time because remember, Ring Bang caused one government to change at that time. And so it was tricky, but really and truly, the attempt had to be that we had to create festivals as a way to magnetize and bring people and woo them. And that's why we call these festivals tourist tempter, which is quite different to the indigenous carnival and Tobago heritage, by the way, which is another discussion.
It is. But before we segue into any other discussion, I think the big question is, or the big figures are the question. Because when we talk about government investing in festivals, we know it is that they're largely footing a massive bill. If we are seeing new iterations or even new persons coming on board to host similar festivals, whether it be a different title, or ultimately create the same sort of drive and the same sort of importance and value that we know these festivals bring, can we talk cost, sustainability, just general cost altogether? Because I don't think the public understands or has clear knowledge of the sort of bill that this brings. Would you be able to talk fairly and freely on that?
It's the same argument for almost any festival. I mean, throughout the Caribbean, governments are hosting festivals because they recognize the value of it to the tourism industry. And the point I'm making to you is that the niche of festival is as important as all the other tourism services, economic services that are being offered, whether it is to fix the forts, whether it is to fix or attractive sites, whatever it is. These are all costs in terms of supporting it. Similar, which is my point to you, I firmly believe this, that those in governance, they have a role to play, and those roles entails supporting what is being done in the space. Because the idea is that you have to attract, you have to have the kinds of persons to attract. And all the other fringe events, they will feed off and actually get support, right, in terms of executing whatever their mandate, because these are all, they're doing those for profit. I'm not saying that you don't have to think about how you have the returns, but I think you have to think about it in terms of support for the tourism industry. And that entails spending some money, yes.
So you have to spend to make, ultimately. I'm asking, though, what does that figure look like?
Look at the solution model, right?
My reason for asking what that figure might look like, Mr. Arnold, is because we're going to see, like you said, perhaps new iterations. And so realistically understanding what that might actually cost someone is where my curiosity lies. Could you give us like a rounded figure?
The last set of festivals were pretty much controlled and contained within the 8 to 15 million. And that, you know, getting these artists, some of these artists cost in the region of 4 to 5 million TT, right? So, and that's just the reality. But you have to also think about what that does in terms of the multiplier effect. These festivals want to bring people. And you would also remember that we also have to think about capacity, because in 2014, when we had John Legend, we were tested. We were tested in every way in terms of traffic, roads, you know, cars, people can get rental cars and so on. And we realized even in the space, and that creates a problem because you had people didn't even get to the venue, right? Because of some of those logistical challenges. So all those, but you see, I think once we get the planning, it's all about planning, right? St. Lucia can announce the artists for 2025 in 2024, you know, but I think for the whole industry of events, event tourism and festival tourism, for me, in a small country, a small island like Tobago, there has to be some state support for that to be as powerful and executed in the way we should see.
Understood.
Remember, my comments are both personal and professional.
And I appreciate the candor and the transparency. But then I want you to tell me that
we have to talk honestly about this.
But that support that you speak of so profoundly, that support we might need to see as promoters are now, all other jazz events are popping up, privately promoting, or rather done by private promoters. And I'm wondering your thoughts and expectations on that future of the jazz experience for the Tobago Festival, whatever name it may take.
Yeah, I call all of these fringe to the real flagship. You need to have last year. What really irks me with the abandonment of the festival this year, personally, is the fact that last year we came out of COVID and such a great start with such great support from the media and people. And by the way, the study, if you go back to the study, because it's important to study, shows that over 80 to 90% of the respondents thought that this was something beneficial to Tobago, both the SMEs, everybody. And so I see all the fringe festivals really supporting, and again, the rising tide, if the big master won, and you saw it last year, there was a festival down at Buku. If you saw the amount of trainees that were there, right, which make up nearly 80% of the attendees for festivals, but if you saw the attendees to that, and that had to do with those who were coming for the mega show on this Sunday with Boys to Men and so on. So you need to have something, because I don't know where anybody, except you getting real heavy sponsorship input, is going to find the kind of money to afford some of the artists that are coming in. I mean, you look at the St. Lucia lineup, all right, from Samari Joy to the Afrobeat star there and so on. And you realize that's going to cost. But you see that they have had some planning that went in to having that.
Well, we plan to have longer conversations with you again in the future, because it's never enough time to explore your thought. But I do appreciate this morning tremendously. Some beautiful insight, and I'm sure somebody at home is going to look up that research to get better information. But I know it's not the last of this conversation, Mr. Arnold, so we appreciate you joining us this morning.
It can't be the last. I wish Raucus was in this, but all right. I mean, Raucus, you and me.
Too. He does too. But for now, thank you again for joining us this morning. This time around, just giving us some insights as former coordinator for Jazz Festivals. But next time around, perhaps we will have a more forward-pushing conversation onto the next, as we might say goodbye to the Tobago Festival, but we'll say hello to another in another way. When we come back, even more festivals to look forward to. Stick around, guys. We'll be back.
Never knew what a fool I was until